Welcome to Digital Ships webinar from the series Making Maritime Digital Projects Work that we host once a month and introduce you to digital project managers from shipping companies and their unique work connecting business needs with digital technology and delivering value, of course. We are your hosts, Vaida and Carl Jeffries, the founding editor of Digital Ship, together with three great speakers today. Madelene Stolpe, she is the CIO of Altera Infrastructure, formerly known as Teekay Offshore. Hi, Madelene.
Hey.
Juan Jose Gil is IT Manager based in Singapore with OSM Group. Hi, Juan.
Hi, Vaida. Thank you.
Kumar Sundaram is the Senior IT Project Manager with Anglo-Eastern, based in Singapore as well. Hi, Kumar.
Hi, Vaida. Hi, everyone.
Interesting fact about Kumar that he attended all our webinars so far, and we are very excited to have him speaking with you today. Just a quick note, please use the Q&A box to ask questions at the end of the presentations. And if you have any comments, you can use the chat box so we know what you think. Carl, it's our third webinar exploring digital projects, and I'm very curious, what new insights do you have into the project management theme?
Okay, well, thank you, Vaida. So one idea I had to try and express what we're trying to do here is for many years, we've been running conferences on software, and we often get stuck into the technical details about user interfaces, how things are designed, how data is integrated together. And that's actually not the really difficult part. The really difficult part is how you plan this whole thing out, how you figure out where you're going, how you get people on board, how you work out if you're on the right track or not. I thought maybe an analogy maybe works if you think about the building world. If you were talking to somebody about a building, you wouldn't want to hear from the building company about how they bolted the steel together. You want to hear from the architect about how they thought this building would be good to put there and how they got the support behind it, how they got the money behind it, how they thought it was going to be used, how they knew they were on the right track. So this is what we're doing here, and this is far more difficult, far more important, and the really critical thing in whether or not these projects work. So we've got three great IT project managers here, one from Oslo and Stavanger today, and two from Singapore. So first of all, I'd like to invite Madelene Stolpe, who's the CIO of Altera Infrastructure, which is the former offshore division of Teekay spun out into a new company. I counted from their fleet list, they've got 9 FPSOs, 4 FSOs, 25 shuttle tankers, 9 towing vessels, and she's going to talk about how she set up the new IT organization with 150 applications, 2,500 clients and all the IT services, and she's joining us from her hotel room in Stavanger. So I'd like to welcome Madelene. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. You set some of the context there, so thank you for that. But just to dive a bit more into it, I am Madelene Stolpe. I'm the CIO of Altera Infrastructure, and I started my job 1 year ago. And the first thing I was told to do was to transition all the IT services from our previous owner, Teekay Offshore, and over to a new company. So the context when I came in was that I were to build the complete new global infrastructure for our company, migrate 180 applications, thousands of SharePoint sites and folders in all of the share drives that we had, 2,500 users and clients across the world in 12 different offices and 50 floating vessels. And then also develop and staff and set the new IT department. And starting off, we were 40 FTEs within the Teekay IT company, but I was told that I were to deliver the same services and the same level of support with just 18. So we had quite a road ahead when I joined. And this were supposed to be done within 9 months. We had 7 existing IT resources that worked for what were to be Altera, and I was given 5 consultants. We were a team of 12 in total to deliver on this. And on top of this, we were to implement a completely new ERP system at the same time, going from Dynamics AX to Oracle Financials. And then, as we all know, COVID-19 came along on top of it. So how do you make that work? That was my big question when I started a year ago. And I would like this to be quite high level. It's only 10 minutes. So I've pointed out 3 main things that I think was contributing towards our success, because we actually did it. We were able to do this in 9 months with just 12 people. And the first thing I would recommend is set aside enough time for planning. Our management and board was so eager to see results. Why don't you just start, migrate the first applications? Why haven't you set up the infrastructure yet? But I was telling them constantly, be patient. We need to allow ourselves time to plan properly, because that's gonna benefit us in the long run. And it really, really did. To take time to map out the full architecture, knowing what's connected with what, and actually dare to challenge the plan again and again to make sure that you have full control. And even though I was the CIO and should just have kind of an overview of this, I deep dive into it and made sure that we had thought about everything in advance. And having that detailed level of activities really helped us when COVID came along and we had to shift around things. We were to migrate our users office by office, but all of a sudden no one was in the office. We weren't supporting 12 offices anymore. We were supporting 2,500 and had to do it one by one instead of doing it over our internal network. So all of a sudden that would be taking us 5, 6, 7 times more resources and time than what we had actually planned for. And having the detailed level of planning then allowed us to actually shift around and change our plan in a much more quicker way than if it would have been high level and we hadn't seen the consequences of what we actually did. And easy things just to think about, when are there country-specific holidays? When you're working globally, it's so easy to think about. In Norway, we have time off that day, so we can't plan for anything to happen. But working globally, you actually need to think about, it might sound like a little detail, but it's important when you are to crunch these many activities within a 9-month period to actually detail it down that way. And then the next thing that I really am very happy that we spend time on and resources on are information to our users. Even though I only had a team of 12, I dedicated 1 full FTE just to steer the communication. We set up our own website, telling our users when are things to be moved, when are you to be migrated, how do you log on? Because when you live in 2 separate worlds, half of our applications at some point were in the old Teekay environment, half of them were in our environment. And it requires a lot of explanations, information, training to our users to actually help them understand how to navigate this. So setting up this website, having regular training with all of our employees every time something new happened, every time something new had been migrated, making user guides available, publishing them, and really spend time on documentation and training and information has been key for us to success. And also align yourself with the business when you are making these user guides or information, because we in IT tend to use a language that not everyone understands. So whatever you write, do quite a quick check-in with some of the actual business users and ask them, is this understandable? Should I rewrite this to make it easy, available to everyone? And also use your support desk tickets actively. If you see that there are issues that are repeated, make sure to make a user guide and create information around it and be proactive and use that as a steering line for what are our users' concern at the moment. The third thing that I would focus on is team building. And when you have this amount of work to be done in 9 months, you tend to forget about the people. You only focus on the tasks and what are to be delivered. But I have a rule for myself that I should always spend at least 30% of my time with my direct reports and with the team in general. Developing people and making sure that they have a good time when they're at work, that they understand their accountabilities, that they know that I'm always available, that they have fun and know each other and support each other. That's been so crucial when we have worked 14, 15 hours and weekends constantly for 9 months in order to deliver this. If you don't know your team, if you don't have fun with your team, you're never going to put in that extra effort and extra hours. So we have had sessions even after everyone was sat in the home office. I called in for having Kahoots and just at night opening a glass of wine, just talking to each other and focus on that team building, even though we are really, really busy. And to have that regular check-ins makes it possible for us to actually address conflicts or issues or questions constantly without being scared of doing so, because you are safe and comfortable within your team and ready to do so. And to actually prioritize this and to celebrate all the victories and have fun along the way, that is crucial. And also as a leader to actually acknowledge your employees and tell them that they're doing a great job, because obviously doing this major project and having COVID-19 with everyone needing more support than ever and being such a small team in IT, because we hadn't even hired everyone that we were supposed to be yet when we're doing this. Obviously, the support wasn't as good as we would like it to be. And we did have a lot of complaints because people had to wait longer than what they would have ideally liked. So making sure to actually give compliments and let your employees hear all the good things that they do as well. Because working in IT, it's just the way it is. You hear the complaints, you rarely hear the good stuff. So you as a leader or a project manager, make sure that you are that person that actually acknowledge your team and make them feel valuable and worthy. So that would be my top 3 tips. And then also a couple of other additional takeaways that I won't go into because of the time. And I guess that you all will get the presentation or have the possibility to look at this later on. But as a general, that would be my top 3 tips. It's nothing about technology. It's all about planning, information, and looking after your people. And I think that's 3 really important takeaways, regardless of any projects that you are running.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, no, that's great. I guess we don't really leave the questions to the end, but yeah, I had a look at your LinkedIn page while you were talking. I see you've got a background in management rather than IT, and I think that came across quite strongly what you were saying, isn't it? I think so. I'd now like to welcome Juan Jose Gil, who's the IT manager in Singapore for OSM Maritime. He's actually from Colombia, but in Singapore at the moment, and he focuses on vessel IT, and he's going to talk about some of the factors that slow down digital transformation projects. And he's been responsible for the whole digital transformation portfolio of OSM Group, which has 500 vessels under management. So I'd like to welcome Juan, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carl, for the warm welcome. Allow me to share my screen. All right. Good day, everybody, in the different parts of the world where you are connecting from. So we are talking today about making maritime digital projects work, and I want to talk about the pitfalls to avoid. I don't want to be on the pessimistic side, but I want to be on the realistic side. So nowadays, we in the industry, we hear about all the buzzwords and all the cool stuff, but very few people, they talk about how to go to the nitty gritty and how to get hands dirty at execution and implementation. So I think it's also important to mention this and to share with the community so we can learn from each other. So there are 3 points that I want to make here in terms of pitfalls that we can avoid. So number one, I would call it lack of clarity. And when I mention lack of clarity, I'm talking about the difference between what is IT and a digital business. So basically, what is digitizing and what is digitalizing. Uh, it seems like also buzzwords, but it has also a very clear definition. And for many people, especially those who are not related with IT, it's difficult to tell which one is digitized and which one is digitalized. But when we look at this graph of the industrial revolution, so we only hear about the fourth industrial revolution, but very few we listen about the third industrial revolution. And this is basically where many companies are getting stuck and they don't know how to move from the third to the fourth, because maybe they were before all this wave of digital, so they were on the second, so they are trying to kind of transitioning from second to fourth and getting stuck on the third. So we also tend in the industry to confuse what is a digitized project and a digital project. So to make that point, for in my thinking, so digitize is just to get something that is currently on paper on a very also legacy system, let's say like an email, and having it into a platform. So that is required to keep up with the industry, to keep up with the business. And that will only give us parity advantage, but that will not give us anything on the cool stuff like innovation and competitive advantage. That is for digitalization. And also when people ask about the ROI, the return on investment. So when you are digitizing and when you are doing something that is purely IT, so that is easier to estimate an ROI, because we are talking about performance. So if we move on to what is digitalized, this is where we can find innovation and competitive advantage. And this is pretty much a bet that the different companies playing in the industry, they do, because they have an idea, they have something that can contribute, add more value to the services. So they want to invest some money in it. In that sense, ROI, some investments might be considered as R&D or venture capital. So we don't know exactly for all the projects when we are digitalizing which of those are going to bring more revenue or value. So we have an idea, but still we need to validate it and test it. And there are methodologies for that, but we also need to be cognizant that there are certain risks in the projects. So now the very wary but very useful people, process, and technology. In most of the meetings, presentations that we attend, we are going to listen to this framework. And I think it is still very, very valid and very important to mention. So first of all, these are the things that we need to keep an eye out. So on the people side, do we have the right people in the right positions and in part of this transformation? So we need to be aware if we have in our companies tech bullies, sacred cows, those who think that things are going to be the same way for another 20 years, and also weak technology leaders. This is part of the people. who are the team and whether we have or not the right people on board. The processes. So processes must be updated according with the new technologies available. Unfortunately, it is very common that I know that changing processes is painful, but we don't really gain any advantage if we want to keep the processes asking the technology providers or asking the technologies just to bend in order to adapt to the process. To me, that is outdated and old-fashioned. So we need to take into consideration what are the technologies that are available now in the market, what we can do with those technologies, and we adapt or we revamp the processes so that we can provide more value. And the third point in terms of technology, and I want to echo what Madelene has mentioned before. So technology in a way is the easy part. Technology is there, is how we articulate technology within our company and for the vision and mission that we have. But at the same time, we have many destructive technologies. They look cool, they look easy, sometimes they look affordable. But the question that we need to ask ourselves is this getting me closer to my strategy, to my digital strategy, or this is just distracting me because it looks cool? All right. The silo operation. This is also, I would say, a buzzword, and very few people really understand what is a silo operation. So silo operation or silo management is not going to be resolved by technology. So let me repeat that. The silo management is not going to be solved by the technology. So what is then a silo operation? This is very typical. So everybody is thinking about the others and not thinking about what we can do ourselves, as in this cartoon. And where we need to keep an eye out is, these are just examples. So decisions that have been made without involving the end users. So decisions made based on the economical part, maybe the technological side, but not involving the end users. So adaptation is going to be way harder if we just overlook this very important part. Another example is having legacy system from the third industrial revolution. And I'd like to highlight or to stress that for people who are not IT people, it's very difficult to understand because in a way IT is an abstract concept. So it's difficult to understand what is a software that has been built with an obsolete technology or with an old technology, and what is a software that is built for 2020 and future proof. Normally, people try to compare IT with something that is tangible, that is a physical equipment, let's say a pump or let's say a crane. And although they can be compared in a way, those hardware and those equipment, people can see how old they are, how obsolete they are. But in IT system, people can't see what is behind, what is in the back end, and how those systems were built. And my last point is about management 2.0. If we really want to break down the silo operation, we need to change our mindset and we need to start running on what is in management 4.0. For that, just very quickly to wrap up. So management 2.0 is based on what is quality and safety, that I think Maritime is doing very well on that. But if we want to really break the silo, then we need to start thinking in a way that is innovative, and if we want to put it in more easy terms, in a collaborative way. So all the stakeholders can get involved. I think I'm running short of time. Just want, if you have time and if you can scan this QR code, you will find one of my articles that I wrote a couple of months ago. focus on project management in technology, and you will find the description of the 5 P's of project portfolio. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you very much. Yeah, it's amazing this theme about involving people comes up over and over again, but I guess it's still, I guess it's still very, very important. I suppose in the non-digital world, people learned a long time ago about the importance of involving people, but it's like the digital world seems to be a little bit behind. But I'd like to welcome Kumar Sundaram, excuse me. So he's also in Singapore. So we're also promising a talk about the areas that are typically failure prone in maritime IT projects and what should be done to prevent these based on his 20 years experience. And as you can see from his background, he's joining us from the control room of one of his ships. I'd like to welcome Kumar. Cheers.
Thank you so much, Carl. And thank you everyone for joining in today. There's a lot to share. And I think the stage has been set very well by Madelene and Juan. I would like to continue that from a very on the deck perspective, as in, how do end users interact and view with, deal with some of these projects. So let me start by sharing my screen. Okay, to start, I think I must say that the failure point was more to attract attention. What we're trying to focus on is how can we ensure success, and we catch any deviations on time so that we don't have to face the consequences of a failure. Sorry, I'm just... Okay, as we can see, the last few years have seen a rapid adoption of digital solutions in the maritime industry. What you see here is the bridge of an ocean-going vessel, and there's more electronics here than probably NASA had when they launched somebody on the moon. So now this has kind of embraced a larger area. Initially, we started off with primarily looking at crew management systems. Then we went on to planned maintenance systems on ships. And then there's automation, procurement started coming in slowly, and communications, emails. So as we note, over a period of time, there was a huge increase in the amount of technology and the amount of software systems that were going on board. The key that we see now in most organizations is the fact that we are looking at survival, stability, and growth for the industry. In the past, there was, I would say, a bit of bravado where people who ran their companies felt that they could do it on the basis of their knowledge and skill sets. So the maritime industry has been probably a bit late in the adoption of technology, but now with COVID coming in and a sudden realization that we need to catch up has really spurred the growth for us. Project management, as we see in the maritime industry, is probably very different or not perceived the same way as it is in a standard IT environment. We are used to managing projects as in shipbuilding projects, ship repair projects, dry dockings, and these are all to physical assets. So you can actually see the progress, plan everything out, and monitor yourself. The IT landscape is different, as Juan pointed out. So there is a need for having a specialized person to do that. And the value of having a dedicated project team in managing these projects is key. When I first did my PMS project, this was way back in 1992, I was given a set of floppies on board, and I was said, okay, that's your new PMS system, you go for it. In today's world, that would not work at all. And even then, it was a kind of stumble, fall, learn, and grow kind of attitude that we had to take. What I'm doing is there are a number of slides. So I'm putting in some of the key points that I want to share in this. And even if we don't go through it, you can probably use them as you progress down the line, and you can watch them after the presentation also. So maritime IT project management, as I said here, we are looking at it in a very different environment. And in this case, we're looking at shipboard environment and a shore-based environment. And in our examples, we're looking more at implementing software systems on board the ships, which are also connected with offices. So in a traditional IT project implementation, we're kind of looking at maybe a stationary office with a few branches. But in case of ships, we're actually looking at floating offices that can be anywhere in the world and with huge connectivity issues. They have their own challenges. So this is a key area there where maritime IT projects differ from the standard land-based projects. Looking quickly at failures, what we define failures typically as something doesn't work as planned, it exceeds your budget, it's not adopted by end users, or it's beyond the time frame planned. Now, in case of failures in the physical world, they're easy to see, and as Juan said, in the IT environment, you don't know, what's there behind and how you are headed towards failure. So there is a challenge in that aspect. So what we try to look at is 12 key areas in project management that are factors for success. And obviously, if you don't manage these, they're also going to be factors for failure. The first in this is managing stakeholders. I'm not going too much into stakeholders. I guess we are all aware of this, but we have to be able to understand who our key stakeholders are and see what their interest in our project is, and then help them to manage that. Getting senior management support for our project in terms of resources, in terms of decision-making, in terms of communications is a key area. And if we do not have buy-in from senior management, then there's always going to be delays, resistance, and I would say in some cases a lack of interest in the progress of the project. So that's a key critical part. The project management framework itself is very important. So in the past, we've kind of winged it in many areas by using our project management skills in the physical world, in other projects, and try and adopt the same into the IT industry. Now we realize that it does need a professional overview and attention as a separate set of skill sets. I think as Madelene said this, the single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. George Bernard Shaw said that many years ago, and it's still valid. Communications is one of the key aspects of ensuring success and keeping everybody in the loop in terms of the stakeholders, in terms of the project team members, in terms of the management, in terms of the end users is very critical for success. People, of course, are the heart of any system, and they need to be, again, taken along communication, giving them encouragement. Madelene has already spoken about that, so about all the ways in which a project team as well as end users can be supported, and that is a very key aspect of ensuring the success of a project. The product itself, in many cases, we end up identifying a product, or it can be something that's an in-house development, or it could be a service. There are several features in that we need to actually take into account, and we have to ensure that the systems actually deliver what we expect of them. The infrastructure that's needed on board the ship as well as ashore is again critical for success. You may have the best of everything else, but if you have a poor network on a ship, or if you have a bad firewall, or if you have a poor cybersecurity organization on board, or poor policies, then that can lead to issues. Standard operating environment and effective planning to ensure that all your hardware is available when you are ready is critical. Change management is a key part of it. So this is carrying the people from the preparation stage across to the transition and then allowing them to stabilize in the new environment. The most critical aspect of any project today is risk and change management. And if we overlook change management, we are definitely, heading towards failure. Managing the vendor also is a key aspect. They are our key partners in this whole process. And if their vision and mission don't align with the projects, then that could be a cause of friction and issues. Quality assurance and quality control from the vendor side in terms of the process with which what they use to develop their product, as well as the final user acceptance testing and delivery on board. The build management and the release management is critical. The project implementation phase kind of monitors all this, and it's very critical to ensure that we are having a continuous watch on the health of the project. So using a pilot to test out scenarios before jumping in live into 100 ships. So using a small subset to validate concepts and to ensure that things are going as you plan. Providing training to end users, having enough support for them, monitoring, measuring are all critical aspects to ensure that the project goes through the implementation phase smoothly and is delivered. Support is a key aspect of the project, and it cannot be underemphasized that how we support the project with our end users even after implementation, in terms of being able to handle support test tickets, in terms of addressing bugs, defects, and rectifying them is critical for this. Many a time, it's kind of taken as outside the scope of the project, but in fact, it's a very important part of the project success, because you may implement, but to continue and sustain it, you do need the support factor. I'll quickly talk about warning signs. There are quite a few warning signs, but I think my time is running out. So I would.
That's the most interesting part, isn't it?
It is actually. So if you can spare me a moment, I will just get to that very quickly. Because we don't understand, as I was saying earlier, in a physical real world project, you can see many of these things happening. Okay, so quickly, the warning signs is you get a high level of user resistance. People don't want to use the system, or they're against you. Your team members are going to be stressed continuously. So that's a sure shot sign that something is not going right. There's scope creep that doesn't get managed. Again, that's something that shows up quite quickly if you are looking for the right signs. You start getting a large number of support tickets into your system, and these are not answered or resolved promptly. There are delays in giving support. Users complain a lot is one part of it, and after a while, there's no more complaints. So there's no voice. So that's also a dangerous sign, because people are kind of giving up on things and don't want to contribute anymore, because the question is, oh, I've said whatever I have to say. Now I'm seeing nothing is happening. Parallel runs when you're trying to replace systems. If you're trying to use a legacy system and the new system simultaneously, and that extends beyond a short period of time, again, there will be user fatigue and a lack of acceptance for the new system. And if there are major bugs in your regular releases, again, you're going to have users resisting adopting to the new releases. And so that's a QC issue that needs to be settled with the vendor. Repeated delays on part of the vendor in terms of delivering the system is something also that can kind of lead to creeps and the project going out of scope and out of budget. And so that's kind of a summary of the warning signs. I would like to end. I think Juan and I came up with a very similar thing, completely out of context, out of this, that I also came up with these 4 key points amongst all these things, that people are the critical aspect of it. If you get support of your people, then you are definitely able to tackle whatever challenges that come your way. Planning is absolutely what Madelene said, also very critical for this. Having a proper process, and also I would say to a lesser degree that the product meets all your requirements and criteria. That is important.
Well, thank you very much. Well, no, that's great.
Thank
Yeah,
you. Just one last
sorry.
point over here is that we're all working towards success. And I have a mentor and teacher who, from whom I have learned that, you know, when we work, we create an intent, which is our original plan and the desire to get an objective that we are working towards. And then we put in the effort. And this effort is completely focused and aligned with the intent, and it is aligned with the outcome, which is the success factor. And we do have this so-called omega factor, which is an unknown element. We call it luck, you call it destiny, whatever. Having these 3 things and working with a great team really brings it all together, and we can easily manage and work through all the challenges that come through in a project implementation. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you very much. Oh, it's very interesting. Yeah, it's a pity we don't have any way of clapping on these virtual things, but if that's when you get the clap. There's a great question has just come up from Matt Atkins. So, well, people often mention you've got the CEO support is absolutely vital in all these projects, and I think Kumar, you mentioned senior stakeholders, but nobody actually said specifically. I think I was on another talk when somebody said getting the CEO behind it is the big difference between if it's digitalization and changing the company, or digitization, which is just getting more digital systems. I don't know if I'd like to invite all of you if you have any. I mean, would you have liked to have said in your presentation if there's more time, getting the CEO is more important, or maybe it's a difficult question, is it? Is that something anyone would like to answer?
Say from my point of view, I think it's crucial to have both the CEO and the entire executive leadership team on board and have their support. And also the point about knowledge, I see it as my responsibility to actually do that knowledge transfer and to make them understand in a way that actually resonates with them, make it understandable, and make them understand what is the actual value to the business by doing this. So not present it as a digital project, but as a business value-adding project. The technology is just a supporting part.
And if I may add to, oh, sorry, no, you go ahead.
Just a quick one, adding to that. So let's not forget that the CEOs, they also have bosses. So the board also had to be on board to approve the funding.
And from my experience, I've seen that if we have the CEO on board and actively engaged in communicating this down the line, that is a huge message sent down to the rest of the organization. And it reduces resistance, and it also can be a very useful catalyst for bringing people together towards a success.
Yeah. Well, another question that came to mind, I mean, all these talks, it's very, very new that people are looking at maritime technology in this way, because, I mean, all these presentations we've had in the past about what technology and satellites we're using, I mean, you all made it look very easy, but you're actually all at the frontiers of the shipping industry in the sense you're doing something at first. I don't know if that's how it feels like within your own organizations. You're pushing through a new culture in the way companies do IT, or maybe your company's been doing it this way for quite a long time. Is that something anybody has any thoughts on?
If I can take that.
Yeah.
See, traditionally in the shipping industry, there have been a few leaders, I would say, who kind of have embraced a digital initiative and tried to use technology for business process improvement and for increasing their efficiency. It's only now that we're finding that we can actually start integrating this, and there are, people have started doing this in their daily lives. You know, so we've got Alexa, and we've got all these fancy robots that do things for us at home. So why not use these features to help us in the way we manage our assets? And the shipping industry is so complex simply because of its diversity and so many varied components that it is an ideal candidate for this kind of communication, automation of processes, working on efficiency, and now with a lot of emphasis on compliance and also environmental compliance. It does become a very advantageous factor for companies to start embracing solutions. However, on a cautionary note, as what Juan said, there's a lot of hype. There are a lot of fancy jargon that is thrown around, and this can be confusing for those who are relatively new in this area. So from what I have seen is absolute ground level, simple solutions, will deliver the outcomes that we expect. We will always prepare ourselves for the future, but the first step is to have a good foundation on which you can build the rest of it, because things like machine learning and big data and all has to first start off on a solid foundation of good systems that collect and manage this data efficiently and accurately.
Yeah. Madelene, do you feel like a sort of cultural warrior within Altera, pushing this management approach to IT with a lot of IT managers having a very different culture, or is that maybe a difficult question to answer in public?
I can admit that I have felt like a warrior for the past couple of months. I think the key is to get a bit structure into it, because I think it's a willingness there, but it's a lot of times it's because you've been at a conference and you've seen some drones and I want to have the same thing, instead of actually starting with what are the needs, what are the challenges, and have more of a cohesive strategy where all of these different pilots actually play together in a good way and are aligned with the strategy. So I think that's been the key thing for me to get across to the management, that we should do this as a more long-term plan, but all the small initiatives should fit into that plan instead of just jumping up like toads here and there. I think that's been the biggest war.
Yeah, which links on to the question that Fiona, our colleague at Digital Ship, would like to ask Juan about the difference between a digital strategy and a distractions. It's the same question, really. Do you have any thoughts,
Yes.
Juan? Yes.
Okay. Thanks, Fiona, for that question. Actually, that is part of the article that I recommended during my presentation. But to be to the point, this is what is the purpose of this digital transformation. So important to mention is that the fourth industrial revolution, or whatever is digitalization, is about to having a business impact. So in whatever the industry or whatever the decision that a company makes, so if we know where we are going with our purpose and with our business transformation, anything cool that is not taking me to that direction is a distraction. It can be a robot, it can be something that we haven't seen before. It is a distraction if that is not part of your journey toward the transformation of your business. That is the answer to the point.
Wow. No, it sounds great. And then this question at the top from Chayon. So I was hearing a talk a little while ago from Tom Siebel at Siebel Systems. He thinks cloud is a real driver of this digitalization thing, and we couldn't do digitalization without it. Now, cloud is quite tricky for shipping for various reasons, but does anybody have any ideas they'd like to share on how relevant is cloud to making all this stuff possible?
I would like to comment on that. So first of all, we need to understand if we are just talking about cloud services as an infrastructure, as a service, and we have typically two strategies for that. Either we can have, let's say, a repository where we have all our legacies and all our data, but it is for this case, in a public cloud. But we also can go with applications as a service, software as a service, and that is already part of the cloud strategy. The biggest limitation, sure, I say there is no problem. The biggest limitation on board vessels is connectivity. Even if you have VSAT connectivity, bandwidth and speed is still very limited to have a cloud connection, and you are going to use up very quickly your bandwidth, And if you want to increase it, then you are going to pay a lot of money for that. That is, but there is a technology for that that is called edge computing. For that, we don't need to send to the cloud all the information that we are gathering on board the vessels, but we process inside, we process on board. It's just a processor, a computer, and we only upload to the cloud whatever is valuable, whatever adds value to our business. But once again, first of all, we need to understand what is the value that we want to create with the data. Otherwise, we are just generating traffic and spending a lot of money in the cloud.
Oh, that sounds great. And if we look at Lawrence's question, so he's basically saying, why aren't companies spending money on software? So that's another thing we've often, the main problem is that companies are just not willing to spend money on investment. I guess that's another part of your role, is convincing the budget holders to spend money on these things. Does anybody have any thoughts they'd like to give on that one?
I think that's all about the business case and how good we are to actually show the reduction of OPEX or the value that you get out of it, because IT has been looked upon as a cost center. But if you really succeed with the digital projects, we're not just a cost center anymore, we actually add value. So I think that's a movement as well, that's from the traditional to the more modern IT, that a software license isn't just a cost, it actually helps you work more efficient, it can save headcount, it can make us more safe, more compliant. So it's all about showing what you actually get in return. And I think, again, going back to starting with the need and what it actually solves, because if you just propose buying a software without actually telling what it's supposed to do for you, then obviously it's seen as a cost.
Oh, okay. Should we go to this top question? I don't actually understand this question from Jose. You've mentioned the need for process update is essential. I think he means the need to focus on processes. He's saying, my experience is companies don't understand what focusing on processes mean. Would you agree? Is that something anybody has any thoughts on?
It depends on the company culture, and also, you know, that we are now working on global companies. So our own offices are melting points. So we have a lot of people coming from different backgrounds, and that adds more complexity to it. But yes, I agree. It's not natural for everyone to understand what is a system and what is a process, and that takes time to understand, but it's purely up to the management how to implement it.
The difference between a computer system and a business process and how they link together.
I think the point that Jose made about having a good application doesn't solve the problem about siloed processes and siloed operations. And I think that's a very common misunderstanding. Just apply some technology and then we will all work together. No, it's not about that. It's actually about the cultural change. And also when it comes to processes, actually, a lot of the software out there is based on best practice processes. And one of the things that I've come across is that, oh, we're so special. We have tailored processes and we need to tailor the software accordingly. And that's one of the things that we're trying to get away from. There's a reason why these softwares are built the way they are. It's because they are based on good experiences. So we're not that special. We're quite similar, actually.
Yeah, no, that's another question. Yeah, how you choose the software to go to, and if you make it yourself. I think it's questions from Demetrius at the bottom is touching on this. Is the road to digitalization, best of breed, hybrid solutions, middleware, all-inclusive strategy? He's not mentioned building it yourself. I don't know. Is that something? Maybe that's too general to answer, is it? I don't know if anybody has any thoughts.
Maybe a quick point on this. For smaller companies, the idea of building it on their own is too big. It's not worth it. For them, it's best to go for proven solutions that have got a good market base. If you're large enough, you're over 500 ships, then it might probably make sense to customize something to your requirements, and then you control the whole environment yourself. But then you're effectively doing it as an in-house implementation. You know, a lot of the larger management companies today have actually done that, but it doesn't make sense to do it commercially for a smaller company.
Oh, very good.
I would say that there are too many good questions that I would like also to contribute, but I don't know if we have time. Maybe we can
3
do
minutes.
another webinar.
Yeah, I was just thinking the same.
Well, this top one about how you, I think Liz is asking how you get the IT infrastructure to develop fast enough for all these digitalization things you want to do. Is that something anybody has any thoughts on?
Yeah, I think that for that, so Shore is quite easy. So we can leverage on hybrid solutions on the cloud or totally public clouds. For the vessel IT part, I think that the limitation is still the connectivity, but as long as the connectivity evolves, the technology and the infrastructure on board is going to evolve too. So I wouldn't see major challenges on that. And we are moving from a capex IT philosophy to an OpEx. So that will also speed up many processes and many modernizations.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
Edward.
software as a service, as what Juan had pointed out earlier, and cloud-based computing actually make a very good business case for shipping for the shipping operations. So that is going to definitely take the lead. And as the initial capital-intensive investments are no longer necessary, so more and more companies can actually jump into the OpEx bandwagon and adopt technology for their requirements.
Yeah, very good. I'd like to give Vida a couple of minutes at the end for sort of closing remarks, but maybe we'll just look at this first question from Lawrence here. So this comes up over and over again, this disconnect. You've got IT people who don't understand the business. You've got the C-suite who've got a lot of ideas in their head about where they want to go, and you're the poor people who sit between them. Is that how it feels?
So Lawrence, I am an example of that. I spent 15 years out at sea, and now the last 20 years I've been in IT. So it does make a difference in being able to understand the domain and the environment, because working at sea is very different, right from the simple application design, where you need to be sure that you have people on board in a rocking and rolling environment are able to use these applications. So the usability factor and the connectivity issue between shore and ship. So having people with the right domain experience to help manage projects is a huge asset to any project, I would say.
That's just to comment on that. That's been important when I've recruited as well, to just not only recruit IT people, but business analysts and people with background from shipping or offshore, and also having as part of our training program to have to go offshore to actually see what you're supporting and working for. I think that's important.
I also think that it's a little bit egg and chicken dilemma, because yes, you need people from the maritime coming from the vessels and joining also this digital transformation. But at the same time, we also need people from different industries and from different disciplines, because they are going to bring a lot of value that we haven't seen here in the maritime, simply because we do just business as usual. But there are other industries under transformation, and that will bring a lot of value to the table. That if we just focus on ourselves, is going to be very long and even more difficult.
Wow. Well, I think we've expressed what maritime digital technology is really about more than I've ever heard before, and there's plenty more to talk about. And I'd like to invite Vida to make the closing words. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. I think many of people who would join to watch us today are involved in managing IT projects themselves. So I would like to see how the stories of the speakers resonate with our audience today. And yeah, please answer quickly a poll and let us know what is the biggest challenge that you face in delivering your IT projects. Okay, so I think we already have the result. So let's see what our audience thinks. Well, the majority, even 33%, thinks that buy-in and acceptance from the users is the biggest challenge. And organization not adopting the right processes is even higher, I think. Yeah. So thank you very much for joining. We invite you to tune in next Thursday to our next webinar, which will be on the vessel performance side. And we'll see you in the next videos. Take care. Bye.
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 Bye bye.